Okay, let's just get into it. After 2024 saw the release of 2 brand new film cameras, there is yet another one coming to the market in 2025. And this one is claiming to be even more affordable and accessible than those 2. And if I'm totally honest, it's set to have some pretty attractive features. Now, it feels like a lot of people are hearing about this quite suddenly, which for the makers of this camera, a company called Analogue, is quite a good thing. It means they're generating some noise, some attraction towards their pristine and insanely clean marketing content. But I do think that's leaving some of their target audience feeling a little bit unsettled or perhaps a little bit nervous. As expected, this new camera is generating some criticism and concern from the film community. I think we need to be mindful though that shooting film is quite a personal experience. It's kind of unique for all of us. We will have different techniques and styles, and that's kind of what makes film really exciting. This process is just not going to be the same for everybody, and that means that everybody is going to have something different that they want from that experience. It's probably a good idea to be prepared to be a little bit disappointed. They're not a big name that we know of, that we've heard of for years. With somebody coming into the game as a bit of a rising star, people are naturally going to be a little bit dubious. With film being a format that is a bit of a creative dinosaur, in a community that is mostly made up of creative dinosaurs, I guess we just still aren't very used. I guess we still just aren't used to very new things. And I think that's kind of down to a lot of us hoping for our perfect cameras. One that's going to meet all of our needs and cater to our individual shooting preferences and styles. And I really think we need to just slow down for a moment. It would kind of do us all good to be a little bit more mindful. Film has been around for an exceptionally long time, and we're in this kind of second coming of film, this kind of 2.0 generation. Whatever new cameras land on the market will meet the full needs of somebody for whatever particular set of circumstances they're shooting in, and if that's not you, that is okay. Because no one camera is going to meet the needs of everybody. And if it did, that would just be truly insane. A miracle, one might say. We've got to stay grounded in reality, and this brand new film camera is shaping up to be just a little bit exciting. So if you haven't guessed already, I'm going to be talking you through everything we know about the new upcoming AF-1 from Analogue. It's looking to be a tidy little camera, and there's a lot of information that we've been graced with already, and not everything is on their website. So I'm going to run you through everything we know and kind of raise a few questions that I think the community are going to have. But first, let's talk a little bit about who Analogue are, because like I said, they've kind of come out of nowhere. So I think knowing a little bit more about them might help people feel a little bit more settled. So who are Analogue? Well, there's not a great deal of information out there about them, and I think that has something to do with their age. The Analogue shop was started in 2020, making it relatively young, and kind of came from this idea that we live in an incredibly fast-paced society, and that people should probably start taking their time and slowing down a little bit. And what kind of works for them is that this is already a bit of an established movement, as we've seen the film resurgence, as we're calling it, in the last few years. More and more people are gravitating towards, a hobby that encourages slowing down, it encourages taking your time and kind of observing the little things and noticing the moments. For them, this is incredible timing, and I think it's going to work out really, really well for them. Now, my understanding is this Analogue shop is a spin-off from an already established creative design agency, which would explain why all of their content is so flawlessly pristine and crisp. I mean, it's gorgeous. It is really, really lovely. It's just visually appealing and kind of enticing. It looks polished, it looks well thought through, and that's only really going to work to generate trust within their brand and what they're trying to achieve. Hats off to them. I think it looks awesome. Now, this new film camera that they're marketing, the AF-1, they've been talking about it for a little while, but it kind of really blew up in the last few days. Now, we've been given this more concise timeline, which is great. We kind of know what we're expecting and when in terms of like production and delivery. I mean, first, what exactly is it that we are going to be expecting? What are we going to be hoping for? Let's break down everything we know so far and then kind of see what questions that we are left with. So this is the Analogue AF-1. Now, this is an image taken directly from their site. I didn't make that myself. Unfortunately, I am nowhere near as cool as the Analogue shop team. I wish I was. Now, we can instantly see that this is a black camera, and Unfortunately and disappointingly for lots of us, this is not going to be a metal-bodied camera at all. Analogue have confirmed that the body is going to be made of an ABS material, which is another way of saying a rigid, opaque plastic. However, they have shared that it's going to be Global Recycled Standard certified, which basically means it's going to meet some strict social and environmental standards, and it's a voluntary certification. The standard applies to the full supply chain and addresses environmental principles, social requirements, chemical content labeling, all of the good stuff that we as consumers quite often overlook. So I think this is pretty cool. And I'm quite impressed with Analogue's willingness to engage in something like this. I think it kind of shows that their morals and values are in line with the consumers, which is, you know, always a really, really good thing. Sustainability is so important at the moment, particularly when it comes to cameras. Visibly, you can immediately see the design of the AF-1 has taken inspiration from some firm favorites within the film community, you know, such as the Contact series, the Yashikati series. It's got that kind of retro boxy look with rounded off edges, but it's also looking to have a sliding front cover, which is very reminiscent of the incredibly popular Olympus Mu and Olympus Zoom series. One of my concerns is that the viewfinder looks quite small, and for anybody who's like me and has quite dodgy eyesight, that's not great in terms of accessibility. What is good about the viewfinder is that they've opted for an Albada reverse Galilean viewfinder, which in very layman's terms means it's going to have two optics with a reflective surface in the middle, and what that's going to do is project frame lines into the viewfinder so that you can frame up everything exactly as you want to. This is a feature that's been in cameras for years. It works incredibly well, it's tried and tested, and it's going to make it feel really familiar. So it's set up to be quite a clean, clear, attractive viewfinder, which is great, but not if you can't actually see through it because it's too small. I'm really hoping it's going to be larger than it looks. Personally, I absolutely hate the sensation of my eyelashes touching against a viewfinder. It just drives me mad. I never really gave it any thought, and then one day I felt it and I haven't been able to stop feeling it since. Something else I'm a little bit worried about is that I can't see anywhere to mount this to a tripod or even to attach a strap, and whilst we've been told that the body has weather sealing, I'd be worried about taking this anywhere near water without knowing that it's secured to either me or a mount or just anything, really. We can see here that kind of lens and lens housing. We'll get onto the lens in just a minute, but what's very cool about this camera is that, as the name suggests, it's going to be an autofocus model. You know, fixed focus lenses have their time and place, but for something that potentially you're going to carry around with you all the time, you want to make sure that you've got those crisp, clear shots, you know, that you're getting your best bang for your buck. They obviously want this to be a success, and I can't really see them having made any other decisions that would have made more sense. Now, what's going to make this quite special is that it's going to utilize LiDAR technology, which is something you've probably heard of if you're interested in cameras in general. And what that basically means is it's going to use lasers to measure the distance between the camera and your subject. And it's quite a quirky way of determining where the focus of the lens needs to land. This is technology that's already widely used within cameras, and I think actually even some of the iPhone models, maybe some of the Pro models utilize this technology as well. So it's out there, you know, we know how it works, we know it's effective. One of my concerns is that whilst this technology I think is going to become almost an industry standard, it's still not a cheap technology to utilize. And I think right now, with the price point that they're going to be marketing this camera at, I'm a little bit concerned that maybe they've overestimated or overshot really with what they're anticipating. My other concern is that in order to keep it cheap, that they use a subpar version of this technology, and actually it's not as effective as we'd like. But the Analogue team seem really confident in what they're developing, so we're gonna have to just wait and see. But I do just want to know now. The next thing we need to talk about is the lens. Now, there is no point in having this incredible autofocus system with a shit lens. Let's have a look at what Analogue have got in store for us. Well, according to them, this is going to be an f2.8 to f16 35mm 6 high quality glass element lens set within 4 groups with a focusing range of 0.5 meters to infinity. They're going to utilize the double Gauss lens structure, which offers really good image rendering and kind of lesser distortion. Image rendering? That's not what I mean. You know what I mean. It's going to offer good quality image rendering, lesser distortion, and reduced aberration, and that kind of outer distortion, meaning we should see relatively crystal clear exposures kind of from corner to corner. And this is a big but, I haven't seen anything mentioned about lens coatings. This is going to be really, really important to know. If you're a frequent user of cameras, particularly cameras with kind of multi-element lens sets, you've probably experienced inner lens reflections or flares. And when you have multiple lenses in a row, you always run the risk of that bright light bouncing around inside your lens barrel. And I think this potential lack of coating for me could end up being a little bit of a deal breaker. I don't see the point in having a 6-element setup without taking that into account. And from what I understand, Analogue have mentioned that they have consulted with an optics specialist. So I'm going to assume that this has come up and that actually it's something that they've maybe missed out or haven't quite decided on yet. So I'll be really excited to see if we get proper coated lenses, but I'm a little bit worried. But let's assume this is a flashy, fully functional, perfect, pristine, sharp lens set. Have we got a super fast and well-timed shutter behind that? Potentially. What we're told so far is that the shutter speeds are quite promising, with a range of 1/1000th of a second to 4 seconds, which is quite a long time for a point and shoot. And really, that's quite exciting. That gives users a lot of versatility, which is something that I think we're all looking for. However, from the design, like I said earlier, I don't see anywhere that's going to allow for tripod mounting, and I'm a little bit confused by allowing shutter speeds of up to 4 seconds without making attachment to a mount or a tripod really easy. And this is going to be a real shame for consumers and people who want to use this camera and maybe want to use lower speed films. I mean, it will work out really well for the manufacturers of blue tack and duct tape. Now, one thing I didn't mention earlier when we talked about the body was that actually the camera does appear to have a flat base. So I'm being a little bit unfair. It will be able to kind of stand on a flat surface, but that's annoying. If you're taking it out and about, you're gonna have to look for things to prop it on. And as we know, nothing really in life is perfectly straight or flat. So we're going to be in this kind of hunt for finding flat surfaces. But, you know, maybe again, I'm being a little bit unfair. Maybe we all just keep a few extra elastic bands with us to kind of stick it to things. They've also indicated to us that this camera is not going to have any kind of manual settings whatsoever. And if we flip back, you can see on the top that we've got kind of 2 simple buttons and a really simple LCD style display. And we can see already that there's nowhere there that's really going to allow us any sort of manual control over the camera. So I think we need to take their word on this. This is essentially going to be a program mode camera. They're sort of suggesting via their socials that they're really proud of this f2.8 lens. So it's going to have an automatic preference for using the f2.8, which makes sense given that they've given this a 1/1000th of a second shutter speed. So it's interesting stuff. The camera is going to utilize DX code reading, meaning it's going to predetermine, based on your roll of film, what settings are necessary for you to get the right exposure, which is great unless you're like me and you are a chronic overexposer of film through choice, which means I guess that DX code stickers are going to be really popular again. You know, we're all going to be making our own out of duct tape and, you know, permanent markers. So I guess that in that sense, we've got some flexibility, but that's more of a workaround than actually utility itself. So no ability to manually control anything, really. Interesting choice. Speaking of those buttons, the one thing we actually do have some manual control over is the flash. It's going to have kind of on, off, forced, red eye reduction. You know, those settings are going to be cyclable by pressing a button. You know, you kind of standard interface really. And I know that lots of people have been asking for some sort of memory function so that it remembers what settings you had selected before you power the camera off. You know, street photographers are a massive sub-community within the film community itself, and catering to them directly, I think, would have made lots of people very happy. Them, of course, but also those of us on the periphery, because some of the functions that they want are kind of quality of life functions that we would all benefit from. Now, I hate it when I turn the flash off on my camera, I close it for a second, walk 10 yards down the road, I open it up again, I want to take a photo of my partner, she's there smiling, and then I accidentally just blind her with the flash because I forgot to press a button twice. It would have been a really nice idea there to be kind of retention of your previous setting choices. But again, maybe I'm just being fussy. Maybe we should just be grateful for what we are being given, potentially. And what's really nice here is that the flash has got a kind of recycle time of 0.5 to 3 seconds. Quite a good time when we compare it to some of the older cameras with built-in flashes, or even some standalone mini flashes that are on the market at the moment. So I am looking forward to that. So those occasions where I do accidentally blind my partner while she stood in the street, it means I can do that again in succession quite quickly. Lucky her. But my fingers are crossed that perhaps this is something that could be implemented. But again, anything that is implemented now after their kind of price projection would probably alter that price, which would be a bit of a pain, because We'll get on to the price in a minute, but it's quite good for what it is. Now, you might notice earlier when we looked at the body of the camera, there is no USB-C kind of charging port. This is not going to be rechargeable in any way. It is going to use batteries, and it is going to use the CR123A batteries, which are kind of an old school battery style, but it's a really popular battery for film cameras, and they're relatively easy to get hold of. I know that they're available on Amazon, as much as maybe we don't all like to use Amazon, but there are lots and lots of places you can get these batteries. So they're quite reliable, they're good quality. Make sure you always get good quality batteries. There are a few more things this camera does, so let's just run through those. As I said earlier, it is a battery-powered camera, and as expected, it's got auto wind and rewind. I'd love it if it was a reverse wind, where your kind of entire roll is unwound, and then it rolls back into the canister as you take photos. You know, it's really good for those of us who maybe use lots of cameras and forget which ones we've loaded. Go back to the body of the camera, we can see that there is a window on the door, which means we are going to be able to see that we've got film loaded. So really, if we're paying attention, that's not a big deal. A girl can dream. Now, what is really nice about this camera is that it has a self-timer, and I think the self-timer is up to 10 seconds. So this is going to be really, really nice for when you're setting up your camera on that perfectly flat tree stump that you've come across, and you're with a group of friends, so you can set it for 10 seconds, make the dash back to them, and you're all in the photo. It helps market this towards a wider audience. You know, the film community is made up of hairy white men a lot of the time. You know, no shade. I think there's a younger and more diverse crowd that have lots of friends and enjoy socializing. And so this is a function that really, really works for them. And let's be real, we are all partial to a self-portrait. So this is a good feature when we're thinking about that, particularly as there's kind of no remote shutter capability on this camera. It also comes with a 2-year warranty. Now, the current speculation online about this camera is mixed due to the projected build quality and the low price point that this is going to be a little bit of a nosedive. I know I've been a little bit critical in this so far, but I do believe in kind of being relentlessly optimistic and hoping for the best. What I really want to know is, will there be a tripod mount or mounting capability? Will there be room for a wrist or neck strap to be attached to it? Will they be implementing any sort of exposure compensation at all? Are we going to be able to see what the focusing range or selected shutter speed is at all? Now, there are cameras on the market that this is viewable within the viewfinders, so it would be a nice function. I don't think we're going to get it. And I really want to know what metering system this is going to be using, because up until now we've talked about a lot, but we haven't touched on metering at all. And arguably that is one of the most important aspects of a modern age film camera. Now, given everything I've mentioned, I think the estimated price point that lots of people were coming up with was sort of in your kind of 600 to 700, 800 pounds, or euros, sorry. And actually what we're seeing at the moment is the projected retail price of 399 euros, which, given everything that we've talked about and in comparison to the likes of the Pentax 17 and the Rollei 35 AF, seems incredibly reasonable, generous, some might say. Analogue have also provided us with a flight plan for the development of this camera, along with an opening pre-launch offer in which they are offering a 15% discount to anybody who signs up and pays a kind of a refundable deposit of £5. I think it's maybe 6 or 7 euros. If the skeptics are right, if this comes in as far too expensive, if this doesn't work out and it's something that does nosedive, it's not a great deal of money to miss out on if it disappeared, but as they are an established and kind of successful business, I would think that actually they would be able to get that money back to us. Now, according to this trajectory, they're looking to have a mass manufacture set for May and June time, with delivery beginning in June/July. Now, my worry here is that this feels a little bit rushed, and that costs are going to be kind of recuperated through the use of maybe cheap internal electronic components, and any internal moving parts such as levers or gears are going to be plastic. But I'll be honest, I have signed up for the pre-launch event. I paid £5. I'm grateful for that 15% off that it affords, but I intend to purchase this camera unless anything serious changes. Now, I know we've been given a lot of information, but I want to know everything. I want to know every single detail. Unlike the average user who might get this and kind of unbox it and want to get out straight away, I definitely will be doing that. But almost immediately after, I want to be taking this apart. I want to look inside. I want to see what's really going on as to what the internal longevity of this camera looks like and what continued use will do to the internal components. Because it's all well and good having a 2-year warranty, but at the moment it doesn't say what that covers. And I go out as far as to say that they probably don't know. So all in all, this is basically everything we know about the Analogue AF-1 at this point, And I'm kind of hoping that everything that we've looked through maybe at least makes this more appealing to you, or at least you can recognize that there is a lot of thought that's gone into this, and that this is shaping up to be, for lots of people, maybe not everybody, but for lots of people, quite a perfect little companion camera. Now, like I said, there are lots of questions and I want answers, but I'm going to have to be patient like everybody else and just wait. I'm grateful for the transparency from Analogue. They've been really forthcoming in answering lots of questions online, and maybe not always in the way that people want or that we're used to from maybe individual creators or personalities. And they're setting themselves up as an authority within this area. As a consumer, we're not actually entitled to all of the information. They can share exactly what they want to when they want to. I would encourage them to continue doing that and leave us all in this cold, dark suspense for the time being. But I think for a kind of first look, a bit of a teaser, I quite enjoyed it.